At Christmas dinner, my sister-in-law handed me a gift. I opened it, and frozen inside was a divorce packet already signed by my husband. She smirked. "He belongs with me." My husband said nothing. I smiled. "Then you love my gift." When she opened it, she screamed. My husband Ryan and I had been married for 8 years. I thought we were happy. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but nothing that made me think divorce was even on the table. I trusted him. I thought we were building a future together. His sister Sophie had always been around too much. Honestly, she and Ryan had always been close. She was his childhood best friend before I even met him, and she never really liked me. She had this way of inserting herself into everything: our date nights, our vacations, even our fights, but I never thought much of it. I should have. That night we were all sitting in the living room after dinner exchanging gifts. Everything was normal, or at least it felt that way. Then Sophie handed me a beautifully wrapped box and smiled. "Open it," she said, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place. So I did. Inside was a stack of papers. At first I couldn't even process what I was looking at. My brain refused to make sense of it. Then I saw Ryan's signature. It was a divorce packet already signed. I stared at it, my heart pounding. My hands started to shake. I looked up at Ryan. He didn't say a word. He just sat there staring at the floor. I turned to Sophie. She was smirking. That's when she said it. "He belongs with me." The room fell silent, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I looked at my in-laws. My mother-in-law's mouth was slightly open, eyes darting between us. My father-in-law just shook his head and let out a sigh. Ryan still wouldn't look at me. He just sat there, his jaw clenched. It felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I took a deep breath, stooting myself. My mind was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. I looked at Sophie right in the eye and I smiled. "Then you'll love my gift," I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. Sophie's smirk faltered. She hesitated before taking it. I could see the curiosity in her eyes, the slight flicker of fear. She opened it. She barely made it past the first page before she screamed, and that's when everything exploded. The weeks leading up to that Christmas dinner had been strange, but I hadn't put the pieces together until it was almost too late. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs earlier. Much earlier. It started in October. Ryan had been working late more often, claiming his company was going through a restructuring. He'd come home exhausted, barely speaking, wolfing down reheated dinner before disappearing into his home office. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd brush me off with vague explanations about complex projects and confidential deals. "You wouldn't understand the technical aspects," he'd say, not even looking up from his laptop. "It's boring financial stuff." But I owned a marketing firm. I understood business, contracts, financial documents. His dismissive tone stung, but I chalked it up to work stress. Then there were the phone calls. Ryan had always been glued to his phone, but now he guarded it like a state secret. He'd take calls in other rooms, speaking in hushed tones. When I walked in, he'd quickly end the conversation with a curt, "I'll call you back." "Who was that?" asked. "Work," he'd reply, but his eyes never met mine. Sophie's behavior changed too. She'd always been possessive of Ryan, calling him constantly, showing up unannounced, inserting herself into our plans. But now there was something different in her demeanor. Smugness. A confidence that made my skin crawl. During our monthly family dinners, she'd make little comments that felt pointed. "Remember when we used to go to that restaurant, Ryan?" she'd say, her hand lingering on his arm. "Before you got married." Or she'd bring up memories from their childhood, stories that painted them as inseparable soulmates. "We always said we'd end up together," she'd laugh, while Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I brought it up to Ryan once. We were lying in bed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "Your sister has been acting strange lately," I said carefully. Ryan tensed beside me. "Strange how?" "Just possessive. More than usual. Sophie's always been like that. You know how she is. But it feels different now. Like she knows something I don't." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Then he rolled over, his back to me. "You're imagining things. Sophie's just Sophie." But I wasn't imagining things. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong, and those instincts had never failed me in business. So I started paying closer attention. The first real evidence came by accident. I was doing laundry and found a receipt in Ryan's pocket. Dinner for two at an expensive restaurant downtown. The date was from the previous week, when he'd claimed to be working late. The timestamp showed 8:30 p.m. When I asked him about it, he barely looked up from his phone. "Client dinner. Big account." Which client? You don't know them. The lie sat heavy between us. Ryan rarely took clients to dinner, and when he did, it was always lunch meetings. He hated evening business dinners, said they interfered with our time together. That's when I started looking deeper. I waited until Ryan was in the shower one morning and checked his phone. He'd changed his passcode, something he'd never done in 8 years of marriage. My heart sank, but I wasn't surprised. Next, I checked our joint bank accounts online. What I found made my blood run cold. Over the past 3 months, there had been regular withdrawals. Large ones. Money I hadn't authorized. Money I didn't know about. Thousands of dollars, disappearing in increments that wouldn't immediately raise red flags but added up to a staggering amount. I printed out the statements, my hands shaking as I traced the pattern of transfers. Most of them were to an account I didn't recognize, but a few were direct payments to someone listed as S. Carter. Sophie Carter, my sister-in-law. Felt sick. I had to grip the edge of my desk to steady myself as the implications hit me. This wasn't just an affair. This was theft. Ryan was stealing from our joint accounts to fund whatever was happening with Sophie. But I needed more proof. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with before I made any moves. That's when I called Marcus Webb, a private investigator I'd worked with occasionally for my business. Marcus was discreet, thorough, and expensive. But this was worth every penny. I need you to follow my husband, I told him during our meeting at a coffee shop across town. And I need to know about his relationship with his sister. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. How long has this been going on? I'm not sure. Maybe months. Maybe longer. What kind of evidence are you looking for? Everything. Where they go, what they do, who they meet with. And I need to know about any financial activities, properties, accounts, anything that might not be on the books. Marcus nodded, making notes. This could take a few weeks. I have time. But Marcus, I leaned forward. Be careful. I think this goes deeper than just an affair. I was right. The first report came a week later. Marcus had photos of Ryan and Sophie together. Not just as siblings but as lovers. They met regularly at a hotel downtown, the same one where Ryan had claimed to have his client dinner. They held hands walking through the lobby. They kissed in the parking garage. But that was just the beginning. The financial investigation revealed something much more sinister. Ryan wasn't just stealing from our joint accounts. He was forging my signature on business documents. Loans in my name, credit applications, even property transfers. He was systematically looting my business and using my credit to fund some kind of real estate venture. Your husband has been busy, Marcus said during our second meeting, sliding a thick folder across the table. He and Sophie have been buying and flipping properties under the table. Cash deals, no permits, definitely no tax reporting. I opened the folder, my stomach churning as I saw the evidence. Fake signatures that looked remarkably like mine. Loan applications using my business as collateral. Property deeds that listed me as a co-owner on houses I'd never seen. This is money laundering, I said quietly. That's what it looks like to me. And here's the kicker. They've already put a deposit down on a condo in Miami. Paid in full cash. Your cash. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined possible. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a marriage that had simply grown apart. This was calculated, deliberate theft. Ryan and Sophie had been planning this for months, maybe years. I thought about all the times Ryan had dismissed my concerns, all the times he'd made me feel paranoid or needy for questioning his behavior. He'd been gaslighting me while systematically destroying my financial life. What do you want to do with this information? Marcus asked. I closed the folder, my mind racing. I want to talk to a lawyer. And I want you to keep following them. I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg. The lawyer, Janet Morrison, was a shark in a tailored suit. She specialized in white-collar crime and had a reputation for being ruthless when her clients had been wronged. This is serious, she said after reviewing Marcus's evidence. We're talking federal crimes here. Bank fraud, identity theft, money laundering. Your husband could be looking at serious prison time. What are my options? You could file for divorce and pursue civil remedies. Or, she paused, studying me carefully. We could refer this to the FBI. Let them handle the criminal side while we pursue civil damages. What would you recommend? Janet smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. I'd recommend both. File criminal charges, let the feds do their investigation, and then sue them for everything they're worth. With this much evidence, you'd likely recover all your stolen assets plus punitive damages. How long would that take? The criminal investigation could take months. But once charges are filed, it puts pressure on them to settle the civil case quickly. Especially if they're looking at prison time. I thought about Ryan coming home every night, kissing me hello, asking about my day, all while systematically robbing me blind. I thought about Sophie's smug smiles and pointed comments, knowing she was sleeping with my husband and spending my money. Do it, I said. File everything. But I wasn't done. I had one more card to play. Over the next 2 weeks, while Janet prepared the legal paperwork and the FBI began their investigation, I made my own preparations. I couldn't let Ryan and Sophie know what was coming. They'd run, disappear with whatever money they hadn't already spent. So I played the perfect wife. I smiled at dinner, asked about Ryan's day, even suggested we spend Christmas with his family as usual. Meanwhile, I was quietly moving assets, securing my business accounts, and gathering even more evidence. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal when Sophie came over for their weekly sibling dinner. She'd sit at my dining room table, eating food I'd cooked, drinking wine I'd bought, all while screwing my husband and stealing my money. You seem stressed lately, she said one evening, her voice dripping with fake concern. Marriage can be so hard. I smiled back at her. Oh, you have no idea. The breaking point came a week before Christmas. I was in my home office late one night when I heard Ryan on a phone call in the next room. His voice was low, but I could make out enough words to understand what was happening. They were accelerating their timeline. They wanted to be in Miami by New Year's. Ryan was planning to serve me with divorce papers on Christmas Day, in front of his family, to maximize the humiliation and minimize my ability to fight back. She won't see it coming, I heard him say. By the time she figures out what's happening, we'll be long gone. Sophie's laughter carried through the wall. I can't wait to see her face. I sat in my office, listening to them plan my destruction, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. They thought they were so clever, so far ahead of me. They had no idea I'd been 10 steps ahead of them for weeks. The next morning I met with Janet one final time. Are you sure you want to do this at Christmas dinner? She asked. It's going to be dramatic. They chose the venue, I replied. I'm just controlling the timeline. The warrants will be ready. The FBI has everything they need. Once you give the signal, this all becomes very real very quickly. Good. They made this personal. Now I'm making it permanent. The days leading up to Christmas were surreal. Ryan was unusually affectionate, probably feeling guilty about what he was planning to do. Sophie was practically giddy with anticipation, barely able to contain her excitement about the surprise she thought she was going to spring on me. I played my part perfectly. I bought gifts, helped with dinner preparations, even wore the red dress Ryan had always said was his favorite. If this was going to be a performance, I was going to give them a show they'd never forget. Christmas morning arrived crisp and clear. Ryan seemed nervous as we drove to his parents' house, fidgeting with the radio and checking his phone obsessively. Everything okay? Asked sweetly. Just work stuff, he muttered, but his hands were shaking slightly on the steering wheel. At his parents' house, the atmosphere was festive. His mother had outdone herself with decorations, and the smell of roasting turkey filled the air. Sophie was already there, practically vibrating with anticipation. She kept shooting meaningful looks at Ryan, who was growing paler by the minute. During dinner, I caught them exchanging glances across the table. Sophie's eyes were bright with malicious excitement. Ryan looked like he might throw up. After dinner, we moved to the living room for gift exchange. This was it. The moment they'd been planning for months. Sophie stood up first, reaching for a beautifully wrapped box under the tree. "I have something special for my dear sister-in-law," she said, her voice honeyed with false sweetness. Ryan's father looked confused. "We already did the gift exchange, didn't we?" "This is extra special," Sophie said, handing me the box with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I took the box, feeling its weight. I knew what was inside, but I let the anticipation build. "Should I open it now?" "Oh yes," Sophie said, settling back into her chair like she was about to watch her favorite movie. "I think everyone should see this." I carefully unwrapped the box, taking my time with a ribbon and paper while Sophie practically bounced in her seat. When I finally opened it and saw the divorce papers inside, I let myself freeze for a moment, let the shock play across my face. The room went dead silent. Ryan's mother gasped. His father's face darkened. Ryan himself couldn't look at me, staring at the floor like it might swallow him up. Sophie was practically glowing with triumph. "He belongs with me," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. That's when I smiled. "Then you'll love my gift," I said, reaching into my purse. Sophie's scream wasn't just shock, it was fear, pure raw fear. The moment the sound left her lips, she clamped her hand over her mouth like she was trying to shove it back in, but it was too late. Everyone was staring. Ryan shot up from his chair. "What did you do?" His voice was sharp, but there was something else in it. Panicked Sophie flipped through the papers like they might change if she looked at them fast enough. Her hands trembled, her breathing was uneven. I didn't say a word, I just watched Sophie turned to Ryan. "Eyes wild, you told me you fixed it." "Fixed what?" My mother-in-law stood up slowly. "What going on?" No one answered. Ryan snatched the papers from Sophie's hands. The moment he saw what was inside, his face lost all color. Good, because inside that envelope wasn't just proof of their affair. That was only the beginning. I knew something was wrong before I had any proof. Ryan had been distant for months, coming home late, guarding his phone like it held nuclear codes. It wasn't just work stress, it wasn't just needing space. Something was off. And then there was Sophie. She had always been around too much, but lately it was different. She was smug. She would give me these little smiles like she knew something I didn't. It made my skin crawl. So I started looking. At first I just checked his phone when he was asleep. Nothing. Then I went through our shared bank accounts. That's where I found it. Money, thousands of dollars draining out. At first I thought maybe he was gambling or hiding an affair with some other woman, but then I saw the transactions, payments to Sophie. I felt sick. I dug deeper, hired a private investigator, and what he found made my stomach turn. Ryan wasn't just cheating on me with Sophie, he was stealing from me. I own a small marketing firm. It's my life's work. I built it from nothing. And Ryan, he had been forging my signature on business documents, transferring money out of our joint savings, taking loans in my name. Sophie was helping him. They were planning to take everything. They had already signed the lease on a new condo in Miami, paid for with my money. I sat in my office staring at the papers, feeling like the air had been knocked out of my lungs, but I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I got to work. Ryan was still holding the papers. His hands were shaking. Sophie looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor. I crossed my legs and leaned back. "You should keep reading." He did, and his eyes went wide because on the next page was a legal notice from my lawyer. I was suing them both for fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. I had all the proof: Ryan's fake signatures, the stolen money, the property lease, everything. My mother-in-law snatched the papers from his hands, scanning them, her face twisted in confusion, then horror, then rage. She turned to Sophie. "Tell me this isn't true." Sophie didn't answer. Ryan finally found his voice. "You can't do this. We're married. That money is..." I cut him off. "No, Ryan, my money, my business, my name. You stole from me." My voice was calm, controlled, but inside I was burning. Ryan shook his head like he could somehow undo everything. "We can fix this." I laughed. "Oh, you already tried." "But see, I got there first." Because while they were sneaking around behind my back, I was moving ahead of them. I had already emptied our joint bank accounts, froze the credit cards, sold the house. They had nothing. Ryan stepped forward, his voice dropping. "Let's talk about this privately. No, no more secrets, no more whispers." They had made this public. They wanted to humiliate me. Fine, now it was their turn. I pulled out my final card, a USB drive. I handed it to my father-in-law. "Plug it in." Sophie let out a strangled no, but it was too late. The TV lit up, and suddenly the whole family was watching security footage from a hotel lobby. Ryan, Sophie kissing, holding hands, walking into a room together. My mother-in-law gasped. My father-in-law's face turned red. Sophie covered her mouth. Ryan just stood there frozen. I stared at them both. Merry Christmas. The hotel footage played on the living room TV like a nightmare on repeat. 3 months' worth of visits, captured in crystal clarity by security cameras. Ryan and Sophie entering the hotel together, their body language unmistakably intimate. Ryan's hand on the small of Sophie's back. Sophie leaning into him like a lover. Ryan's mother made a sound I'd never heard before, somewhere between a sob and a retch. She turned away from the screen, but her husband grabbed her arm gently. "No, Margaret. You need to see this. We all need to see what they've done." The footage switched to another date. This time they were in the hotel restaurant, feeding each other dessert across an intimate table for two. Sophie threw her head back laughing at something Ryan said, and he reached across to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "Turn it off," Ryan said, his voice barely a whisper. "Why?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "You seemed so eager to share things publicly. Shouldn't the whole family see what you've been up to?" The next clip showed them in the parking garage, pressed against Ryan's car, kissing with desperate hunger. Sophie's legs wrapped around his waist, his hands tangled in her hair. Ryan's father stood up abruptly and walked to the window, his shoulders rigid. 8 years, he said to the glass. 8 years you've been married to this woman, and this is how you repay her. Dad, you don't understand. I understand plenty. His father turned around, and I'd never seen him look so disgusted. I understand that my son is a thief and a liar, and my daughter is. He couldn't finish the sentence. Sophie finally found her voice. It's not what it looks like. I laughed. A real laugh, genuine and sharp. Oh, this should be good. Please, Sophie, tell us what it looks like when two people spend 3 months having an affair while stealing money to buy a love nest in Miami. We weren't stealing. Sophie shot back, but her voice cracked. Ryan said the money was his too. From the business I built. With my inheritance. Using forged signatures on loans I didn't authorize. I pulled out another folder, this one containing bank records, loan applications, and property documents. Would you like to explain these to your parents, Ryan? Ryan lunged forward, trying to grab the papers, but his father intercepted him. Don't you dare. You've done enough. I spread the documents across the coffee table like I was dealing cards. Here's a loan application for $50,000, with my signature, except I never signed it. Here's another one for $75,000, same thing. And here's my personal favorite, a property deed for a house in Sophie's name, using my business as collateral. Ryan's mother picked up one of the loan applications, studying it with trembling hands. As the family's bookkeeper for their small restaurant, she knew what she was looking at. This signature, she said slowly. It's not quite right. The in Sarah is too rounded. And this date, weren't you out of town that week, Sarah? Business conference in Chicago. I have receipts, boarding passes, hotel confirmations. I was 800 miles away when I supposedly walked into that bank and signed for a loan I didn't know existed. The weight of evidence was crushing, but Sophie wasn't ready to surrender. You're twisting everything. Yes, Ryan and I have feelings for each other, but we're not criminals. Then explain this. I pulled out one final document, a lease agreement for a beachfront condo in Miami Beach, signed by both Ryan and Sophie, with a deposit of $75,000 paid in cash. Ryan's father read over his shoulder, his face growing darker with each line. Deposit paid. Cash payment. Occupancy date January 1st. He looked up at Ryan with complete disgust. You were planning to run away together on New Year's Day. Dad. With her money. The old man's voice shook with rage. You were going to steal everything from your wife and disappear with your own sister. She's not my sister. Ryan exploded. She's my stepsister. There's no blood relation. The distinction seemed to make everything worse, not better. Ryan's mother gasped again, covering her mouth. That makes it worse, Ryan. She was 14 when I married your father. You were 16. We raised you together. We were never really siblings, Sophie said defiantly. We've been in love since we were teenagers. Then why didn't you just get together when you were young and single? Yes. Why wait until he married someone else? Sophie's face flushed red. Because he chose you. He chose wrong, but he chose you. And I've been waiting 8 years for him to realize his mistake. So you decided to help him realize it by stealing my money and planning to frame me for tax evasion? What? Ryan's father's voice was sharp. I pulled out yet another document. The properties they bought were all cash deals, no permits, no reported income. When the IRS audits those transactions, and they will, all the paper trails lead back to me. My business, my signatures, my tax ID number. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fireplace. Everyone was staring at Ryan and Sophie like they were strangers. We weren't trying to frame you, Ryan said weakly. No. Then explain why every single illegal transaction has my name on it while you two are listed as property managers and consultants. You set me up to take the fall while you two lived happily ever after in Miami. Ryan's mother stood up suddenly, her face pale but determined. I need to make a phone call. Mom, wait. I'm calling the police myself, she said firmly. Before you make this any worse for this family. You can't do that, Sophie shrieked. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, Ryan's father said coldly. Family doesn't lie and cheat and destroy lives for money. I watched this play out with grim satisfaction. They'd wanted to humiliate me in front of his family, force me into a corner where I'd have no choice but to accept their betrayal quietly. Instead, they'd exposed themselves as criminals and perverts in front of the people whose opinions mattered most to them. But I wasn't done yet. Actually, I said, checking my phone, there's no need to call the police. They should be here any minute. What? Ryan's face went white. I've been working with federal investigators for 3 weeks. Bank fraud, identity theft, money laundering, these are federal crimes, Ryan. The FBI has been building a case. As if on cue, car doors slammed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the front windows. Sophie started hyperventilating. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. Oh, it's happening, I said, standing up and straightening my dress. You wanted to give me a Christmas surprise? Well, surprise, you're both going to jail. The knock at the door echoed through the house, followed by a firm voice. Charleston PD. We have a warrant. Ryan bolted for the back door, but his father blocked his path. Don't you dare run. Face what you've done like a man. Sophie collapsed onto the couch, sobbing hysterically. Ryan, do something. Fix this. But Ryan was done fixing things. As the police entered the house with their warrant, he just stood there, defeated and broken, finally understanding that his carefully planned escape had become his prison. Ryan Carter. Officer Rodriguez held up the arrest warrant. You're under arrest for bank fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. As they read him his rights, Sophie turned to me with wild, desperate eyes. Please, she begged. Please don't let them do this. I'll do anything. I'll give back the money, I'll disappear, You'll do nothing, I said calmly. Because you have nothing left to give back. I already took it all. The confusion on her face was almost comical. What do you mean? While you two were playing house and planning your escape, I was busy. I emptied our joint accounts, froze the credit cards, sold the house, even repoed that car you thought you were so clever hiding in the hotel parking garage. The condo in Miami. I contacted the management company this morning. Turns out when you buy property with fraudulent funds, the sale can be voided. They're keeping the deposit and evicting you. Sophie's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. But the money. We need that money. You needed my money. And now it's back where it belongs, with me. Ryan was being led away in handcuffs when he finally looked at me. Sarah, please. We can work this out. I'll make it right. I walked over to him, close enough that only he could hear me. You know what the funny thing is? If you just asked for a divorce like a normal person, I probably would have been reasonable about the settlement. Maybe even generous. But you chose to steal from me, lie to me, and try to destroy my life. So now I'm going to destroy yours. His face crumpled. I loved you once. No, you didn't. You loved what I could give you. My money, my stability, my business connections. You never loved me. As the police car pulled away with Ryan in the back seat, Sophie made one last desperate attempt. She threw herself at my feet, literally grabbing my ankles. Please, I'm begging you. Drop the charges. I'll do anything. I looked down at her. This woman who'd smiled at me across the dinner table while planning my destruction, who'd worn my jewelry and eaten my food while stealing my money. Get up, Sophie. You're embarrassing yourself. I can't go to prison. I can't. You should have thought of that before you decided to commit federal crimes. Ryan's parents stood in their living room, surrounded by the wreckage of their Christmas celebration, looking older than I'd ever seen them. Sarah, his mother said softly. I'm so sorry. We had no idea. I know you didn't. This isn't your fault. What will happen to them? I thought about the conversation I'd had with the federal prosecutor just that morning. Ryan will probably get 5 to 7 years if he takes a plea deal. Sophie will get less, maybe 3 to 5, since she was more of an accomplice than the mastermind. But they'll have to make full restitution, and they'll both have felony records. Good, Ryan's father said firmly. They deserve whatever they get. I gathered my things, ready to leave this house and this family behind. As I reached the door, Ryan's mother called out to me. Sarah, what will you do now? I turned back, looking at these people who'd become family to me over 8 years, who'd been betrayed almost as badly as I had. I'm moving to New York. My business has been offered a partnership with a firm there. It's a fresh start. Will we ever see you again? I considered the question. These people had loved me, welcomed me, treated me like a daughter. It wasn't their fault their son was a criminal and their stepdaughter was a sociopath. Maybe, I said finally. After some time passes. After all this is behind us. I walked out into the cold December night, leaving behind 8 years of my life and stepping into an uncertain but hopeful future. Behind me, I could hear Sophie still crying, still begging someone, anyone, to save her from the consequences of her choices. But I was done saving people who didn't want to be saved. I was done being the victim in someone else's story. It was time to write my own. 6 months later, I sat in my new office in Manhattan, looking out at the city skyline and reading the final court documents. Ryan had taken a plea deal, 5 years in federal prison, full restitution, and a permanent felony record. Sophie got 3 years in community service, since she'd cooperated with the investigation and testified against Ryan. The money had been recovered, plus substantial damages. My business was thriving in New York, and I just signed the biggest client in my company's history. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan's mother. Thinking of you today. Hope you're well. I smiled and typed back. I am. Very well. And for the first time in years that was completely true. But the story didn't end there. Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them, and mine was no exception. 2 years after the trial, I was attending a business conference in Chicago when I spotted a familiar face across the hotel lobby. Sophie Carter, though she probably wasn't using that name anymore. She looked different. Thinner, older, her hair dyed black instead of her natural blonde. But I'd recognize those calculating eyes anywhere. She saw me at the same moment I saw her, and her face went white. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she quickly turned and walked toward the elevator bank, clearly hoping to escape before I could approach her. Followed. Sophie, I called out as the elevator doors opened. She stepped inside without looking back, but I caught the door before it could close. We need to talk, I said, stepping into the elevator with her. She pressed herself against the far wall, her eyes darting between me and the floor numbers lighting up above the door. I don't have anything to say to you. Funny, because I have plenty to say to you. The elevator stopped at the 15th floor, and Sophie bolted out. I followed her down the hallway until she stopped at a room door, fumbling with her keycard. What do you want? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I want to know why you're here. Go. At a conference for marketing professionals. Last I checked, you were a convicted felon with no business experience. Sophie's hands shook as she finally got her door open. I'm trying to rebuild my life. Is that a crime? Depends on how you're doing it. She turned to face me, and I was shocked by how much she'd aged. Prison had not been kind to Sophie Carter. Look, I served my time. I paid my debt to society. I'm trying to start over with a clean slate. Under what name? The question hung in the air between us. Sophie's silence was answer enough. Identity fraud again. Yes. Really? You'd think 3 years in federal prison would have taught you something. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're running some kind of scam, aren't you? New name, fake credentials, probably targeting small business owners who don't know better. Sophie's face crumpled. I don't have a choice. Do you know what it's like trying to get a job with a felony record? No one will hire me. I can't even get an apartment in my real name. So you decided to start scamming people again. I'm not scamming anyone. I'm providing legitimate marketing services. Under a false identity. It's not false. I legally changed my name after I got out. Sophie Chen is my legal name now. I studied her face, looking for the tells I'd learned to recognize. The way her left eye twitched when she lied. The way she touched her neck when she was nervous. She was nervous, but she wasn't lying about the name change. What kind of marketing services? Yes. Social media management. Small business consulting. Nothing big, nothing complicated. And your clients know about your background. Sophie looked away. What they don't know won't hurt them. There it was. The same Sophie who'd justified stealing from me. Who'd convinced herself that her actions were somehow acceptable because she needed the money. You haven't learned anything, have you? Said. You're still the same person who thinks the rules don't apply to you. You don't understand what it's like. Sophie's voice rose, and I saw a flash of the old anger. You got to keep everything. Your business, your reputation, your life. You got to be the victim while I lost everything. You lost everything because you chose to commit crimes. You chose to steal from me. You chose to sleep with my husband. I loved him. You loved what he represented. Security. Money. A way out of your pathetic little life. Sophie flinched like I'd slapped her. You always thought you were better than me. I never thought about you at all until you made yourself my problem. We stood there in the hotel hallway. 2 women whose lives had been forever intertwined by betrayal and revenge. I should have walked away then. Should have left Sophie to her small-time cons and fake identity. But something made me stay. How is he? She asked quietly. Ryan. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. I wouldn't know. I don't keep track of my ex-husband's life in prison. He wrote to me once. About a year ago. Said he was sorry for dragging me into everything. Are you expecting me to feel sorry for either of you? No. I thought you should know that he regrets what happened. Good for him. Too bad his regret doesn't undo the damage he caused. Sophie finally looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine remorse. Not self-pity, not anger, but actual regret. I know you'll never forgive me, she said. And I don't expect you to. But I want you to know that I think about what we did every single day. How we hurt you. How we destroyed your marriage and your trust. If you really felt that way, you wouldn't be here running another con. It's not a con. Sophie's voice cracked. I'm trying to build something legitimate. Something honest. But no one will give me a chance with my real name. I looked at this woman who'd once been so confident, so sure that she could manipulate her way into anything she wanted. Now she was broken, desperate, clinging to a fake identity because her real one was too damaged to be useful. What would you say, I asked slowly, if I offered you a chance to do this legitimately? Sophie's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean a real job. Real references. Real training. Under your real name. Why would you do that? Was a good question. Why would I help the woman who'd destroyed my marriage and stolen my money? Maybe it was because I'd spent 3 years building a new life in New York, and success had made me generous. Maybe it was because holding on to anger was exhausting, and I was tired of carrying that weight. Or maybe it was because seeing Sophie broken and desperate reminded me that the best revenge wasn't destroying someone. It was becoming so successful that their betrayal became irrelevant. Because, I said finally, everyone deserves a second chance. Even you. Sophie stared at me like I'd grown a second head. I don't understand. My company has been expanding. We need junior consultants, people willing to start at the bottom and work their way up. The pay isn't great and the hours are long, but it's legitimate work. You'd hire me. After everything. I'd give you a chance to prove you've changed. One chance. You mess up, you're gone. You lie to me again, you're gone. You try any of your old manipulation tactics, you're gone. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Say yes or no. But decide quickly, because this offer expires in 30 seconds. Yes, Sophie whispered. Yes, I want that chance. I pulled out my business card and handed it to her. Be in my office Monday morning at 9 a.m. Bring your real identification, your real work history, and a detailed explanation of exactly what you've been doing since you got out of prison. Sophie clutched the card like it was a lifeline. Sarah, don't thank me yet. You haven't earned it. I turned to walk away, then stopped. And Sophie, if you're thinking about running some kind of long con on me, some elaborate plan to get back at me or steal from my company, you should know that I have security measures in place you can't even imagine. Try to cross me again, and I'll make your previous prison sentence look like a vacation. Sophie nodded frantically. I won't. I swear I won't. We'll see. As I walked back to the elevator, I wondered if I was making a mistake. Sophie had proven herself capable of incredible betrayal and deception. Giving her access to my company, even at the lowest level, was a risk. But it was a calculated risk. I had the power now. The money, the success, the control. Sophie was broken and desperate, starting over with nothing. If she tried to betray me again, she'd lose everything. And this time there would be no coming back. More importantly, I was curious to see what would happen. Would Sophie take this opportunity to genuinely rebuild her life? Or would she revert to her old patterns of manipulation and theft? Either way, I'd be watching. Monday morning came, and at exactly 9 a.m. Sophie Chen, formerly Carter, walked into my office building in Manhattan. She looked nervous but determined, carrying a folder of documents and wearing what was clearly her best attempt at professional attire. My assistant showed her to the small conference room where I was waiting with my HR director and the head of our junior consultant program. Sophie, I said as she sat down. I'm glad you came. Thank you for this opportunity, she replied, her voice steady despite the obvious nerves. For the next 2 hours we went through everything. Her real work history limited, her criminal record extensive, and her plans for the future surprisingly thoughtful. She answered every question honestly, even the uncomfortable ones about her time in prison and her recent activities under her assumed identity. Why should we trust you? Asked Jennifer, my HR director, who knew the full story of my history with Sophie. Sophie took a deep breath. You shouldn't. I haven't earned your trust, and I know that. But I'm hoping you'll give me the chance to earn it. I know I made terrible choices. I hurt people who didn't deserve it. I broke laws and destroyed relationships for money and jealousy. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I can't undo what I did. But I can prove that I've learned from it. That I can be better than I was. And if we decide to hire you, I asked, what guarantees do we have that you won't steal from us? That you won't try to manipulate clients or colleagues? None, Sophie said simply. You have no guarantees except my word. And I know my word isn't worth much to you right now. All I can offer is complete transparency. Monitor my work, check my references, watch my behavior. I'll submit to any oversight you think is necessary. It was a good answer. Honest, realistic, and without the kind of dramatic promises that would have made me suspicious. There's one more thing, I said. If we hire you, some people in this industry will know who you are. They'll know about your past, about what you did to me. How will you handle that? Sophie was quiet for a long moment. I'll tell them the truth. That I made mistakes, served my time, and I'm trying to build something better. If they can't accept that, then I'll have to live with it. After Sophie left, Jennifer and I discussed the decision. This is insane, Jennifer said bluntly. Hiring your ex-sister-in-law who helped steal from you. The liability alone is manageable, I finished. We'll put her in a position where she has no access to sensitive information or company funds. We'll monitor her closely. And if she screws up, she's gone. But why risk it at all? I thought about that question for a long time. The truth was complicated. Part of it was curiosity. I wanted to see if people really could change. Part of it was a weird form of closure. Helping Sophie rebuild might finally put this chapter of my life to rest. But mostly it was because I could. I had enough success, enough power, enough security to take this risk. And maybe, just maybe, it would prove that I'd truly moved beyond what Ryan and Sophie had done to me. Because I can afford to be generous now, I told Jennifer. And because everyone deserves a second chance. We hired Sophie as a junior consultant with a 6-month probationary period. Her salary was modest, her responsibilities limited, and her access to company resources heavily restricted. But it was a real job with real potential for growth. For the first few months, I barely saw her. She worked on small projects, learning the systems, building relationships with her colleagues. I got regular reports from her supervisor. Solid work, no drama, no red flags. The real test came 4 months into her employment when she was assigned to a project involving financial projections for a client. It was the first time she'd have access to anything resembling sensitive financial information. I watched the project closely, ready to step in at the first sign of trouble. But there was no trouble. Sophie did her work competently and professionally, and when the project wrapped up, every penny was accounted for. She's actually quite good at this, her supervisor told me during our monthly review. Detail-oriented, creative problem-solving, good with clients. If I didn't know her history, I'd say she was one of our stronger junior hires. 6 months turned into a year. Sophie's probation ended, and she received her first real promotion, to senior consultant with her own small client portfolio. She'd proven herself reliable, trustworthy, and genuinely skilled at the work. But the real moment of truth came during the company holiday party. I was standing near the bar, watching my employees celebrate another successful year, when Sophie approached me. She looked different than she had that day in Chicago. Healthier, more confident, genuinely happy. "Sarah," she said, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For giving me this chance. For believing I could be better than I was." I studied her face, looking for any sign of manipulation or hidden agenda. All I saw was genuine gratitude. "You earned it, Sophie. No one gave you anything. You gave me the opportunity to earn it. That's more than I deserved." We stood there for a moment, 2 women who'd once been enemies, watching our colleagues laugh and celebrate around us. "I have something to tell you," Sophie said quietly. "Ryan's being released next month." My stomach tightened slightly, but not with fear, with curiosity. "How do you know?" "He wrote to me. Asked if I'd pick him up from prison. And I told him no." Sophie met my eyes. "That part of my life is over. I'm not the person who made those choices anymore." "Good," I said simply. "He also asked about you. Wanted to know if you'd ever forgiven him. What did you tell him?" Sophie smiled. A real smile, not the calculated expression I remembered from before. "I told him that forgiveness wasn't something he should expect from you. That the best thing he could do was leave you alone and focus on rebuilding his own life." Smart advice. I learned from experience. As Sophie walked away to rejoin the party, I realized something had shifted. For years, I defined myself partly by what Ryan and Sophie had done to me. The betrayal, the theft, the lies. They'd become part of my story, part of my identity. But standing there, watching Sophie laugh with her colleagues, seeing her succeed in the life she'd built with her own efforts, I realized that chapter was finally closed. Not because I'd forgiven them, Forgiveness was something they'd have to earn through their actions, not something I owed them for free. It was closed because I'd moved beyond it. I'd built something better than what I'd lost. I'd proven that their betrayal hadn't broken me. It had made me stronger. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sarah, this is Ryan. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I hope you're happy." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Ryan Carter was a chapter from my past, and I had no interest in reopening old books. My story was still being written, and it was going to be magnificent. 3 months after Ryan's release, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. My assistant buzzed me on a Tuesday afternoon. Her voice uncertain. "Sarah, there's a man here to see you. He says he's your ex-husband." My blood ran cold. Did he give his name? Ryan Carter. "He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important." I took a deep breath, weighing my options. I could have security escort him out. I could refuse to see him. But curiosity won out over caution. "Send him up. But stay close to your phone." 5 minutes later, Ryan walked into my office, and I barely recognized him. Prison had aged him dramatically. His hair was grayer, his face gaunt, and he moved with the careful posture of someone who'd learned to watch his back. He wore an ill-fitting suit that had probably come from a thrift store. "Hello, Sarah." "Ryan." I didn't stand up, didn't offer him a seat. "You have 5 minutes." He shifted nervously, his eyes taking in my corner office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture. "You've done well for yourself." I had good motivation. "What do you want?" I wanted to apologize. In person. I know a text message wasn't enough. "You're right. It wasn't. And neither is this." Ryan flinched but pressed on. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. What Sophie and I did was unforgivable. But I needed you to know that I think about it every day. The guilt, the shame, it's eating me alive." "Good," I said simply. "I also wanted to tell you something. About Sophie. That got my attention." "What about her?" "She's changed. Really changed. I saw her when I got out, tried to reconnect, but she wanted nothing to do with me." He ran a hand through his hair. "She told me she works for you now." "She does. How can you stand it? Having her around after what we did?" I leaned back in my chair, studying this broken man who'd once been my husband. "Because I can afford to be generous now. Because I won. Won. Look around, Ryan. This is what winning looks like. You tried to destroy me, and instead you destroyed yourself. I built something bigger and better than anything we had together." Ryan's shoulders sagged. "I know. And I'm glad. You deserved better than what I gave you." "Yes, I did." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. "What do you want from me?" asked finally. "Nothing," Ryan said quietly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. And to ask, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" The question I'd been avoiding for 5 years. I thought about it seriously, looking at this man who'd once shared my bed, my dreams, my life. Who'd promised to love and honor me, then stolen from me and humiliated me in the worst possible way. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday. But forgiveness isn't something you get to demand or expect. It's something I might choose to give if and when I'm ready." "That's fair. What are you doing now?" "For work." Ryan's face flushed with embarrassment. "Construction. Day labor mostly. No one wants to hire a felon for anything permanent. And you're staying clean. No more schemes, no more shortcuts. Clean as a whistle." I learned my lesson the hard way. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a business card. Not mine, but for a construction company I'd done marketing work for the previous year. "Call this number. Ask for Jim Morrison. Tell him Sarah Parker referred you. He's looking for people with experience in project management." Ryan stared at the card like it might bite him. "Why would you do this?" Because everyone deserves a second chance. Even you. But after everything, I'm successful enough to help my enemies. That's real power, Ryan. He took the card with shaking hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't screw it up. Ryan stood to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, I did love you. Maybe not the way you deserved, but I did love you. I know, I said. But love without respect, love without trust, love without honesty, that's not really love at all. After he left, I sat in my office thinking about the strange turns life takes. 5 years ago, I'd wanted nothing more than to see Ryan suffer for what he'd done to me. Now, watching him struggle to rebuild his life, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not the kind of pity that excuses bad behavior, but the kind that recognizes shared humanity even in our enemies. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Jennifer from HR. Sarah. I just wanted to let you know that Sophie Chen submitted her application for the senior manager position. What do you think? Honestly, she's the best candidate we have. Her work over the past 18 months has been exemplary. Her clients love her, and she's shown real leadership potential. Any concerns? Just one. Are you comfortable having her in such a senior role? It would mean she'd be in meetings with you regularly, working on high-level strategy. I thought about Sophie as she was now. Professional, hard-working, genuinely remorseful for her past actions. Then I thought about Sophie as she'd been. Manipulative, selfish, destructive. Schedule the interview, I said. Let's see what she has to say for herself. Sophie's interview was scheduled for the following Friday. She walked into the conference room wearing a sharp business suit, her hair professionally styled, carrying herself with quiet confidence. She looked nothing like the broken woman I'd encountered in that Chicago hotel. Sophie, I said as she sat down, tell us why you want this position. Because I want to build something lasting, she replied without hesitation. For 18 months, you've given me the opportunity to prove that I can be more than my worst mistakes. This promotion would let me help other people do the same thing. Elaborate. I want to develop a program for second chance hiring. There are people out there, formerly incarcerated individuals, people with troubled pasts, who have real skills and genuine motivation to change their lives. But they can't get opportunities because of their records. Jennifer leaned forward. That's an interesting idea, but it comes with significant liability issues. I know, Sophie said. I've been researching it for months. There are ways to structure these programs that minimize risk while maximizing impact. Background checks, probationary periods, mentorship programs, gradual increases in responsibility. I was impressed despite myself. This wasn't just career ambition. This was someone who'd found genuine purpose in her work. Why should we trust you with this level of responsibility? Yes. Sophie met my eyes directly. Because I know exactly what it feels like to be written off, to be judged by your worst moment instead of your potential. And because I've spent every day for 18 months proving that people can change if they're given the chance. And if we promote you, how do we know you won't revert to your old patterns? That success won't make you overconfident again. You don't know, Sophie said simply. Just like I didn't know 18 months ago whether I was capable of real change. But I can tell you this. I wake up every morning grateful for this opportunity. I go to bed every night determined to earn another day of your trust. That's not going to change just because my title does. After the interview, the hiring committee was unanimous. Sophie got the promotion. Her first project as senior manager was exactly what she'd proposed. A pilot program for second chance hiring. She worked with local reentry organizations, developed partnerships with halfway houses, and created a structured program for bringing formerly incarcerated individuals into entry-level positions. The program was a success beyond anyone's expectations. The first group of hires showed remarkable loyalty and work ethic, and their success stories became case studies for other companies looking to implement similar programs. 6 months into her new role, Sophie knocked on my office door. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. "Come in." She sat down across from my desk, and I noticed she looked nervous, the first time I'd seen her anything other than confident in over a year. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Ryan contacted me last week." My stomach tightened. What did he want? "He's been working for the construction company you referred him to. Apparently he's doing well. They offered him a permanent position with benefits." "Good for him." "He wanted to know if I thought there was any chance of the three of us reconciling. Maybe being friends again." I almost laughed. "What did you tell him?" "I told him absolutely not. That you and I have a professional relationship built on my 18 months of proving I'm not the same person who helped him steal from you. But that doesn't make us friends, and it certainly doesn't make us family." "Good answer. But I also told him something else." Sophie paused, choosing her words carefully. "I told him that what we did to you was the worst thing I've ever done. Not just the theft, not just the affair, but the way we planned to humiliate you. The way we convinced ourselves you deserved it." I was quiet, waiting for her to continue. "I think about that Christmas dinner sometimes," she said. "How excited I was to hurt you. How much I enjoyed watching your face when you opened that gift. It makes me sick." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that my regret isn't just about getting caught. It's about who I was. The kind of person who could take pleasure in someone else's pain." I studied Sophie's face, looking for any hint of manipulation or performance. All I saw was genuine shame. "And who are you now?" I asked. "Someone who's trying every day to be worthy of the second chance you gave me." "That's a good answer." Sophie smiled slightly. "I learned from the best." As she stood to leave, I called her back. "Sophie." "Yes. You should know that I've been watching you closely for 18 months. Her face went pale. "I know. And in all that time, through all the projects and deadlines and stressful situations, you've never once reverted to your old patterns. You've never tried to manipulate a situation to your advantage or throw someone else under the bus to save yourself." "I've thought about it," she admitted. "Old habits die hard. But I like who I am now better than who I was then." "So do I." After Sophie left, I realized something had fundamentally shifted in how I thought about the past. For so long I'd carried the weight of their betrayal like armor. It protected me but also defined me. Now, watching both Ryan and Sophie struggle to rebuild their lives, I understood that my true victory wasn't in their suffering. It was in my ability to move beyond what they'd done to me. That evening I called Ryan's mother, something I hadn't done in over 2 years. "Sarah." Margaret's voice was surprised but warm. "How are you, dear?" "I'm well. Very well. I wanted to let you know that I saw Ryan recently." There was a pause. "How did he seem?" "Different. Humbled." "He's working construction now, staying out of trouble." "Thank God. James and I have been so worried about him." "I also wanted you to know that Sophie is doing well too. She's working for my company. Has been for almost 2 years now." "Really?" "We heard she'd moved to New York, but we didn't know." "She's changed, Margaret. Really changed. I think you'd be proud of the woman she's become." Margaret was quiet for a long moment. "Are you saying? Do you think there's hope for our family to heal someday?" "I think," I said carefully, "that healing takes time. And it starts with people taking responsibility for their actions and doing the work to become better. Ryan and Sophie are both doing that work. And you? Are you open to, I don't know what to call it, reconciliation?" I thought about that question, the same one Ryan had asked, the same one I'd been avoiding for years. "I'm open to the possibility," I said finally. "Someday. When enough time has passed and enough trust has been rebuilt." That's more than we dared hope for. After I hung up, I walked to my apartment window and looked out at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere in this city, Sophie was probably working late on another project, driven by the same determination that had rebuilt her life. Somewhere else, Ryan was probably heading home from a construction site, tired but honest in a way he hadn't been in years. And here I was, successful beyond my wildest dreams, finally free from the anger and hurt that had driven me for so long. It had taken 5 years, but I'd finally won the only victory that really mattered. The one over my own pain. My phone buzzed with a text from my business partner in London. New client wants to meet next week. Biggest contract in our company history. Congratulations. You've built something amazing. I smiled and typed back. Just getting started. Because the truth was, I was just getting started. The girl who'd been betrayed and humiliated at a Christmas dinner was gone, replaced by a woman who'd learned that the best revenge was building a life so magnificent that the people who'd hurt her became footnotes in her success story. And this story, my story, was far from over.